Hello, and welcome to another episode of Jaxon Talks, everybody. With me, your host Jaxon Stone, and I got another special guest. I guess we're coming with the hits here on Jaxon Talks, everybody. But yeah, I'm joined today by another very successful, very well-traveled, independent professional wrestler, GPA. Welcome to the show, man.
Nice to be here, and yeah, I guess that works. Successful is a relative term, but I'll take it.
It is a relative term. Whatever it means to you. What is? I mean, we'll hop right in. I love it. What is that? What does successful mean to you?
I mean, to be honest, that has kind of been altered over the past few years because I think I think I'm uh, safe to say that like when you first come in, you aim for the highest level. Like you think that success in wrestling is getting signed to a multi-million dollar contract, being at the main event of WrestleMania, biggest star in the world. Like that's success when you first enter wrestling. But I think once you're in it for a while, you realize that like the personal gratification aspect of it is a lot bigger than I think you realize when you start. So yeah, I think the goalposts have been shifted for me a little bit, where it's like obviously I'd love to reach the highest level and be the biggest star in the world. But at this point, I think just uh, being happy with my work personally is kind of what success has amounted to, or what I define as success at this point.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. Especially we're in the new year, so a lot of people are talking about like goals and resolutions and stuff like that. And for us wrestlers, that's like really hard right now because we don't know what's going on, right? Just like with the whole world, we don't really know what's going on. Things seem to be getting better with more vaccinations and stuff, which is fantastic. But also other things keep getting worse, which is hard. Yeah, so success, I think, is like a personal journey, and I think for wrestlers, we always wanted to be a wrestler when we were young, and so just having one professional wrestling match in front of a crowd is actually a dream come true. And so if we can kind of hold on to that, like our child self, like putting on our some trunks with our made up wrestling names on our butt and like wrestling in front of people, that's like really cool. And if we can kind of take that sense with us through our career, maybe it helps us with kind of the bullshit that comes with being in professional wrestling, you know?
Yeah, I really do agree, and I think that I don't know if lucky is the right word, but like for me, a lot of the um, relative success that I've achieved has come kind of later in my career. So I would say I was toiling away, like doing local Chicago feds for the first probably 6, 7 years of my career. And it was only in the past few years that I've started actually, getting plane tickets and getting down to other states and different parts of the country. So when I'm able to do those things now, I think I better appreciate like how cool that is, like I'm having my travel paid for. I'm getting to fight people that, I have heard good things about from other places and other parts of the country, people that have been on TV or whatever it is. So like I think uh, you can definitely fall into the trap of too much too soon in wrestling. I think like you'll see a lot of people that start out and they're barely out of training school and all of a sudden they're getting tryouts and they're on TV. And I think it kind of skews your perception of how all this stuff actually works, because I think you and I both know it takes a lot. It takes a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of struggling to really uh, get to whatever the next level is in wrestling for you. So um, I'm happy that I'm able to really appreciate like what I am earning at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, you've been coming down to Texas. I mean, before all the coronavirus stuff happened, you were coming down to Texas on a pretty regular basis, I would say. Um, how did that come about? Like, when did that start happening? Because I don't think I was living here in Texas when you started coming here regularly. So I missed you for the most part. I think we were on maybe one or two shows together here, specifically in Dallas. But yeah, when did that start happening?
So that was, I think, I want to say 2018. It was either the end of 2018 or the start of 2019. But Jeff, the top guy for heel face, he was working in kind of a secondary role with Sabotage at the time, and I believe he has family up here in Chicago. So he had heard good things about Freelance, which is the top company here in Chicago, and I was in the midst of my fierce battle with Kylie Ray at that point. So he got to come up here, and he saw one of the shows where we were doing our thing, and just as fate would have it, like he took a liking to me. He got in touch with me after the show that he was at, and yeah, we just kind of kept in contact, and he put in a word, and actually Thunder Rosa was a big part of that too, because she and I had worked together here in Chicago, and she was affiliated with Sabotage at that time too. So just kind of the two of them just had the idea to bring me down there, let me cause the chaos that I was causing up in Chicago down there in Texas, and yeah, it all just kind of started by happenstance that way.
That's awesome. Heel face wrestling is amazing. They I don't think they get enough credit for all that they do, especially here in the Indies in Texas.
Yeah, they're really kind of the lifeblood of the scene down there, and they have been for a while. And that's another thing I've started to kind of appreciate more as my career has gone on, is like you really appreciate the behind the scenes people, the ones that, that set up the rings, that do the lighting, that record the shows, that make all of us look as good as we want to look. So yeah, those guys are definitely underappreciated.
Yeah, they're the rock stars. Before I ask you this one question that I generally start my show with, but I wanted to go on the other tangent that we started off, which was kind of nice and organic. But have you always been GPA, or when did like you really figure out that that's the direction of your character you wanted to go in?
Yeah, this is who I've been from day one. I got the idea because when I started training, you would do your training class, and then it was a requirement that afterward you all hopped in the car and drove around town and passed out flyers. So in the midst of that, we're all just BSing in the car like we always do, and we were discussing something just really dumb and trivial, but I was like breaking it down in a really unnecessarily like analytical way. And one of the guys in the car was like, you always do that. Like, you always just sound so smart, no matter what we're talking about, whether it's what we're going to have for lunch or girls or whatever. Like, you always sound so smart. And so I kind of took that idea, and it was like, well, I don't feel like I'm doing that intentionally. So if that's kind of the vibe that I'm giving off, then I can just run with that, and as they say, turn the dial up to 11 and just be this obnoxious smart guy. So that's kind of where that all started. But yeah, that was pretty much a day one thing for me.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. I mean, specifically over like the last, I want to say maybe 10 months, I've really watched your Twitter, because you started putting out some really, I don't know, like during the midst of everything that was going on, there was very few people that kind of put out tweets that I thought were like authentic and genuine. It came from their heart. They really meant what they said. They were going to stand behind the things they tweeted. And one of those people for me was you. And I was like, it's kind of funny that his character is GPA, but he's like putting out these really insightful, wise, like from the heart tweets. Not to say that I agreed with every single thing that you put out. I think that would be wild if we just agreed on every single point. But I just really, for the most part, I did though. Like, which is also, I mean, like 90%, I'd say. I can't tell you the 10% is the ones that I don't agree with. I didn't have them written down or anything, but I was just gonna, yeah. So like that for me, doesn't have anything to do with like your character. I think it has something to do with like you as a human being, and just like being informed about what's going on and having an intelligent, empathetic take on the world today. So I just wanted to point that out. I think we'll probably get into Twitter a little bit more in a bit, because that seems to be the hot take in indie wrestling these days. But normally the way I start this show is by asking just one very specific question. I think it holds a lot of weight. I think it's normally a question that people use kind of just to say hello, but I think if we can start answering it a little bit more honestly and openly, that it can kind of ease some of the divide that we have a bit, and maybe help people release some of these like painful emotions that they may have, and at least find someone to talk to. So I'm going to ask you, how are you doing? Like for real.
It's funny with questions like that. It's almost like depends on the day that you catch somebody on. At least I feel like it's that way for me. so much of it, like I feel like I'm like a windsock. Like it's all dependent on what's happening in the world. If everything looks like it's kind of trending in the right direction, then I feel, normal and upbeat, and I can kind of go about my mundane things throughout the day. Um, if things are taking a downturn, like they have more often than not, then I kind of get that overwhelming sense of dread, and you kind of feel helpless to the whims of the world. But I would say in this moment, I'm decent. Like I think this is probably the high end of how I can feel during all this. Like uh, and as we're recording this, we have inauguration day in a couple days, and there's all kinds of stress and drama surrounding that. And so it's like if I try to take things minute by minute, and as is often said, if I try to just focus on things that I can control, then I generally feel quote unquote normal. But when I start to zoom out a little bit and see the country at large and the world at large, that's when things get a little bit heavy. So um, yeah, but overall, I'd say that I'm doing about as well as I personally can be doing in a time like this.
Yeah, that's good to hear. What what kinds of things? Because I know you live with your partner. What kind of things maybe have you? Yes, the great Lainey Luck. Yeah, she's a rock star. Um, what kind of things did you do personally, or did you guys maybe do together during lockdown, or when you're just living together, just in general, when things did get super heavy, and you didn't really have maybe you didn't have the escape of going to wrestling, and you're just kind of there with each other, you know?
Yeah, and I think just the fact that we are together has kind of been the key to the whole thing. Um, we've just kind of ridden the roller coaster together. So when times are at their worst, we're there to bounce our feelings off each other there. When things are looking up, we're there to celebrate together. So I think just the fact that we are together has kind of been our approach to handling everything. It's funny because I'm such a kind of an introspective person that I'm very, very grateful that I've uh, found myself with her during this time, because I think if I were just internalizing the world during all this and I was alone, like I don't know if that's a hole that I ever could have crawled out of. So yeah, so I mean we haven't done anything like spectacular, because I mean for one, we're all very limited in what we can do. We can't travel, we can't, go to do this, do that. Like we've just kind of developed a routine. I remember during like the heat, the thickness of the lockdown, when nobody could do anything, we would just go on daily walks. And she was getting really into like at home yoga. And she's definitely the the more motivated one of the two of us when it comes to staying active and just kind of trying to keep up the routine as best we can that we kind of had before all this. She's very committed to her daily workouts, and she wants to get outside and see the sun and do all these things that, if left to my own devices, I would not do. So, um, so yeah, just we've both just kind of leaned on each other during this time, because I think we've needed to. And I think for all of us, we're kind of finding that that's how we have to get through this, is as best we can, is just lean on people, whether it's people that we happen to live with or friends via things like this with Zoom and social media, or whatever. But yeah, we're just kind of dealing with things as they come, and we're doing it together.
It's beautiful because for a lot of people who were living together during the pandemic, and especially during the really intense parts of the lockdown, that their relationships broke, you know, their and that's a tough pill to swallow, right? Not only you're dealing with a lockdown, you can't really leave, and now you're finding out that you're not really compatible, or you may not even like the person that you're with, and that's difficult. So you would say during all of this that you and Lainey's relationship got stronger.
Yeah, I would say so. And again, I'm very, very fortunate for that, because I have been in relationships that I guarantee you, if I had been stuck in these circumstances with past partners, it would have been ugly. Like it would have blown up, and it would have been a literal fire, not a figurative fire, unlike the literal fire that I was in over the summer. But yeah, no, it was yeah, we've because we both kind of have like uh, personalities that don't necessarily lend themselves to super closeness with people, but for whatever reason, like because of how I am, because of how she is, we're very compatible in that we can spend, inordinate amounts of time together, and it's not an issue. Um, so yeah, fortunately, because of how much time we've had to spend together, it hasn't been an issue. And like you said, if anything, it's kind of brought us closer together, because I think any relationship is strengthened when it's able to deal with major adversity and still exist throughout all of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weather tested. It's got to be,
Yeah.
No one person or relationship is not going to step in shit. And so what happens when you do step in shit, So I think you guys got that figured out, or at least you're figuring it out together, which is the best part. And yeah, I think we need more of that in today's society. So figuring it out together. But speaking about Twitter again, did you so especially when the speaking out movement happened, which we're like 8 months removed from that, did you feel what?
I just said it seems like yesterday. Time is so weird.
Yeah, it does feel like yesterday. I mean, an 8 months removed really from that kind of traumatic experience is not a long time at all. It's like really not. It's not a lot of time for the people who shared their stories. It's not a lot of time for the people who got called out to try to start healing. It's just not a lot of time. But anyways, with that said, when that started happening on Twitter, did you feel, as someone who's active on social media and has a following and has a fan base and tweets regularly, did you feel pressure to say something about that? Or was it something naturally that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I guess pressure is a way that you could sort of describe it. Because of the nature of that specific issue, and with it being definitely a more female focused issue, I didn't feel like it was my place to sort of bang my shoe on the table and stand up and say, these are my thoughts and all of you should listen to me on this issue because I have important things to say. Like, it wasn't one of those kinds of things. It was one of those where I felt I could be supportive, I could amplify voices that I felt maybe needed more of a platform. But as we've seen with other issues that might not involve us directly, I think listening was more important for me to do at that time than anything else. So I know I chimed in with some things here and there, and just kind of gave sort of temperature checks on a frequent basis, but I didn't really feel like it was my place to try to make grand points and draw the attention to myself, because that was really more of something for the women of wrestling to sort of unite over and make sure that their voices were being heard at that time.
Yeah. And now, yeah, like I said, 8 months removed, not a lot of shows happening since then. So we can't really see specifically the change that needed to be made. But do you think with the shows that are running and the things that we are doing as a group of independent professional wrestling, do you think we're headed in the right direction with that specific issue of like safeguarding and making things safe and inclusive and and taking those measures?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say yes, but I can't definitively say that I've seen like hard examples of better policing going on within the industry, because there are people, on national television right now who had very heavy accusations levied against them, and there wasn't really much punishment handed down via, the company or even the coworkers or anything. So, I mean, it's going to be up to, I think, the biggest companies in, we'll say, indie wrestling to sort of set the tone for all that. Because, I mean, I'm sure we've both seen small companies just kind of use whoever. Like, unfortunately, it doesn't really matter what kind of person you are. There's always a place that's going to take you. So, I'm never going to hold out hope for like the entire industry to turn their backs on people that don't deserve to be in it. But I think a strong example can be set by the top companies to no longer, do business with people that have been proven to be problematic, who have, ample evidence stating that they should not be included in this community. So, and to that uh, idea, I guess I haven't really seen many problems out of the top company. I mean, a lot of places are running right now, so that's part of it too. But I'd say the ones that have been running have, they've been saying the right things, they've been trying to do the right things. So at least there's an awareness now. But as with any major issue like that, like it's going to be uh, an ongoing process, and it's going to be up to both the wrestlers and the fans to keep these companies in check too. So if they see things happening or if they see things moving in the wrong direction, it's up to all of us to make sure that we point that out and try to make sure we don't, backslide to the same place that we were before all this.
How much differently do you think the whole speaking out thing would have been if shows were running regularly the same way they used to be? Do you think it would have gotten as much attention? And you think they're like, because you can't really make those real deep adequate changes while everything is still rolling. And so how do you think that played a part in the whole movement and bringing more awareness to those kinds of things?
I mean, honestly, I think the fact that we weren't running at full speed at that time really helped. The fact we were all able to slow down and focus on the issue at hand. Because, I mean, that's just life now. It doesn't matter if it's this issue or anything. Like, it all just gets washed away by the news cycle within 48 hours. So I think the fact that all this started coming out at a time when we were all forced to just sit and slow down and focus on things one by one, that really helped shine a light on what people were trying to say. Because if this had happened during a normal time, I think it would have been a big issue for, you know, 24 to 48 hours, and then something wacky would have happened on the weekend shows, and people would have forgotten about it. And so, you know, it, um, I think that for the attention that it was given, hopefully that means that it'll affect more change going forward. But again, we'll see. Like it's up to all of us to make sure that we're enforcing all these rules and regulations that we've been pushing for this whole time. But yeah, I think that it definitely helped the fact that we were able to focus so strongly on it at the time. Because if it were a normal time, it would have been out of the news cycle quickly, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I'll just reinforce what you said. It's up to us as wrestlers to actually stand behind the things that we said and the things that we care about and take action in the appropriate direction. So just echoing that statement.
And what's difficult about that is that, unfortunately, I think all of us have pretty close degrees of separation to a lot of the names that were thrown out there, like whether it's people who had companies or people who were just very influential in, a certain part of the country or a certain genre of wrestling or whatever it is. Like, I don't think any of us were that far removed from the people that had accusations levied against them. And so that's kind of always been one of wrestling's bugaboos, is that, we put our personal advancement over everything, over our integrity, over our friendships, over our relationships. There's so much that we tolerate because we want to get ahead in wrestling. And I think that's going to be the biggest hurdle going forward is can all of us take the betterment of the community overall and put that ahead of our own betterment? And remains to be seen.
Remains to be seen. Yeah, it's heavy, it's but it's very important. But I think you're right for sure. And speaking about Twitter, social media in general, how have you kind of remained informed about what's happening and also maintained a level of sanity by not just doom scrolling 24/7. Have you figured out a balance? Because some days I'm crushing it, and other days I'm like, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think I've figured out what I would call a healthy balance. I think the biggest thing for me is if I have enough going on in my personal life during the day that it can like distract me and literally stop me from doom scrolling. Because, and as they say, idle hands are the devil's playground. Like if I have nothing to do, then I'm just going to sit here and stare at the world and just be horrified at what I'm seeing. So I think if I have things that I can do, whether it's my day to day job or hitting the gym or video games or literally any other like constructive distraction, that helps me regulate my doom scrolling time. But it's weird because with the nature of the problems that we're facing, sometimes it feels irresponsible to look away. Like
Mm.
we have to for our mental health, but at the same time, sometimes it feels like any day could be the end, and like I need to be informed, and I need to know, and if there's things that I can do, or there's things I need to be informed about for my own safety or whatever it is, like I want to be that informed. So um yeah, so it's very difficult to find the balance of both kind of that blissful ignorance for your own sanity, but at the same time remaining informed because we're in extremely historically significant times, and you want to be sure that you're consuming it appropriately so that it can kind of dictate how you act going forward. um but yeah, no, I don't think I've found the perfect balance yet, but I think a lot of it just kind of depends on where we're at the time. So I feel like this past week has been not so bad. Like we had the awful insurrection attempt, whenever it was, a week ago, 2 weeks ago at this point. Um, we've had,
Yeah, that was what, January 6th, right?
yeah, and it's
January 18th today. So yeah, almost 2 weeks removed.
yeah. So I feel like it's been, and then we had the impeachment after that. So there's been things going on, but in terms of like direct, serious, oh my God, follow it minute by minute stories, we've been okay the last few days. So I've allowed myself to just sort of, I've been playing video games a lot. I've been, working, doing whatever I can. Um, so yeah, I think that like distractions are a big key during all this. Like if you have other things that you have to do or just really, really want to do that don't involve scrolling social media, then I think you should take advantage of those as much as you can while you can.
Have you, when you are trying to prioritize your mental health during all of this, have you found what works for you? I talk a lot about having a mental health toolkit. I think it's like a wildly important idea because most people want to start prioritizing their mental health when they get into a crisis. Like that's when we ask for help, when we're spiraling out of control. And at that point, it's really hard to figure out what works for you, what doesn't work for you. There's so much information on social media that it can be just almost overwhelming. Like I should journal, I should meditate, I should walk, I should do this, I should do that, I should call for help, I should text the hot. Like, and you don't know what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And if the first thing you try doesn't work, it's all bullshit, and then you're just going to keep spiraling. And I get that because we're in a hard spot. So I always say that it's best to find out about your mental health toolkit or what works for you when you're feeling decent. Just try a few things out, what works, and have a list of 2, 3, 4 things that you can go to when you're feeling like things might be getting bad for you. So have you found anything for you yourself that helps you in your mental health journey?
I think for me personally, it is pretty much about routine. I'd say I'm a pretty routine oriented person. So if I know that I can wake up tomorrow, have breakfast, go to work, come home, take it easy, go to the gym, come home, watch a movie, play video games, whatever. If I like know that that's going to be my foreseeable future, then I think that kind of calms me down a little bit. And I pretty much know the pockets of my day where I'm going to just consume social media and doom scroll and all that. But it's like, at least I know when it's coming, so I can
Mhm.
kind of be prepared, like, okay, well, I know tomorrow at 1 o'clock, I'm just going to feel like the world is ending. And then it's like, okay, but then after that, I'm going to get busy. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. So I think, yeah, for me, it's sort of the power of routine is what keeps me regulated. Um, I feel like maybe the worst of it was the initial lockdown period where everything went away. So we went from having everything we wanted to having nothing. So I couldn't, there was no work, there was no gym, there was no wrestling, there was no nothing. Like it went from all to nothing. And so um, that was hard because it was just, and then the George Floyd incident happened shortly after that. And then things just started spiraling and spiraling and spiraling. So, but now that we've reached, for better or worse, a point in this country where we can kind of do what we want to do relatively. Um, that's kind of helped me level out. Um, and again, just having people, whether it's Lainey or, my parents or whoever, like it's having people that I can bounce my feelings off of when they get too heavy. Because again, I internalize a lot. I'm a very kind of introspective person, but when we go through the things that we go through, during times like this, you reach a boiling point and you have to let it out with other people, whether they're like-minded or whether they're just there to listen or whatever. Like you need people that you can just let some of your feelings and emotions out, or even just talk and complain about the same things. Just you need that pressure release. So, but yeah, overall, I'd just say routine is kind of my safeguard against all this.
Mm. Yeah, routine is very important. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are that way. A lot of people are want to handle their problems internally and figure it out themselves. But just like you said, there's no problem with at some point asking for help or calling a friend and just being like, "Hey, I need to get a few things off my chest," and then continue to go. We all have our own ways of dealing with things, and we just got to make sure that those ways are healthy, and they put us in the best mindset possible to do whatever we got to do. So yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, and I think that, like, I mean, I know for me personally, I'm not the type of person who's going to reach out and say, hey man, I've got some things I really need to talk about. Can we talk about them right now? But I'll do it in my own way, where I'll just sort of like, you know, come in casually and just be like, oh well, hey man, how about that Bears game last night? Yeah, that was pretty crazy, huh? Hey, so are you filled with dread every moment of your day? Like, it'll do kind of like, it'll start small, but then I'll eventually get to the place that I'm trying to get to. But I think, yeah, anybody that gets kind of like an unprovoked message from me, like they should interpret that as me just sort of not asking for help, but just know that it's probably going to get heavy before too long.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure those are the texts you're sending are to your people, so they probably know you by now.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's good. It's always good to have your people that you feel you can go to. So that's important.
Yeah, and I was talking to a buddy, actually, Jason Cade. I'm sure you met him
Yeah,
or know him, but yeah,
yeah, he's awesome.
yeah, he is, and he's off social media right now. But he and I have kept in touch throughout all this, and I think for both of us, like we're both kind of each other's pressure release. But I remember talking to him about, like, you need people who kind of play certain roles when it comes to your mental health. So like I know that there are some people that I can talk to on a certain level, and then there's other people that I can talk to on kind of a deeper level, and whether it's personal things, professional things, whatever. So like he and I kind of have one of those friendships where, like, if there's something that I know I just can't say on social media because I'm going to get a ton of heat for one reason or another, like he's one of those guys that I can say it to him so it's out of my system. But like somebody needs to hear it. So, and I can't just say that to anybody because then they might say it to somebody else, and then it becomes this whole rigmarole. But like you need those friends that you can definitely say exactly what you want to say to, and then other friends that you can just kind of have general deep conversations with. But I think it's important to have those people that like, not what they're good for, but like that if there's certain things you need to say or do, those are the people that you can turn to.
Absolutely. I think that goes I think that goes absolutely hand in hand with the mental health toolkit, because you know exactly if you're feeling a certain way or you need a certain thing to get off your chest, you know exactly who you can go to in those moments, and that's super important, you know. Um, and yeah, Jason's awesome. We've had a few pretty intense conversations at some shows, so he's a lovely guy. I hope he's doing all right. Um, where's he at? Is he in Florida still?
Yeah, he's in Florida. He is like I think right in the Orlando area, so he's kind of like right in the midst of all the like PC uh wherever they're filming Raw and SmackDown and stuff. Like he's right in that area right there. So, but
Mm.
yeah, he's doing well. You know, again, as well as people can be in times like this. But yeah, he's he seems to be finding constructive ways to spend his time. I know he's doing a lot of training down there with all those guys, and just kind of keeping himself busy. So yeah, he's doing pretty well.
Sweet. Yeah, so I want to just flip directions a bit. I want to talk about Mia Khalifa.
Which hey, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't?
Yeah. So first, yeah, we're flipping the script, I guess. Okay, so I would like for you to tell the people who Mia Khalifa is, why she's famous, and how you know her, and why she's your favorite wrestler.
So let's see. I'm not even sure how you would describe her currently. I know she's let's say a entertainment personality. Maybe
Yeah,
that's
I
it.
want to say she's in like sports ish.
Yeah, I know she works with I think like some of the gambling sites and does like predictions and stuff like that. But yeah, but I mean she made her name in the adult entertainment industry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she's I guess maybe famous or infamous depending on perspective and some of the things that she's gained her fame from. Um, but yeah, that whole situation was very unique because honestly, I didn't really know much about her prior to her whole wrestling association. Um, so I mean, the whole story is a few years ago she came out and she had some disparaging things to say about professional wrestling because she was on some kind of panel show where they were discussing Ronda Rousey transitioning from UFC to WWE, and she just crapped all over the idea of going from a quote unquote real sport to a fake sport, and it's embarrassing and yada yada. And so of course, wrestling being the way it is, like it's okay when we crap on each other, but outsiders are not allowed to crap on us. Like that's the line. You can't say bad things. I can say bad things. So she got a whole bunch of negative attention and a bunch of hate from people. And then, kind of being the savvy businesswoman that she is, Thunder Rosa reached out to her privately because Thunder Rosa was still kind of the head of Sabotage at that time, and they were running in Austin, which is Mia Khalifa's hometown. So Thunder Rosa kind of had the idea of like, hey, now that you've got all this heat, like, do you want to make money off of it and take advantage of it and come on down? So they were doing one of their big War of the Genders shows, and it just so happened that the way things worked out, they were able to get Mia to make an appearance on that show, um, and by all accounts, that was her first like prolonged exposure to professional wrestling. So uh, the layout of that building was they had the ground floor and they had an upper level, and I was one of the first, I think, two or three matches on that show, and she just happened to be watching from the balcony at that time, and it was me and Kylie Ray. That was our first like big one-on-one match. It was a real good match. I really enjoyed it. Crowd was really into it, and I think Mia just had a blast watching it. So, like, I finished the match, walked upstairs, and one of the first people to come running up to me was Mia Khalifa. She was like, "Oh my God, that was so great! That was so much fun! Like, can I take a picture with you? Like, my followers loved it." I guess she was live streaming it on her Instagram or something. She was like, "Oh, my
That's
followers
awesome.
loved it."
That's so
Yeah,
awesome.
it really is. And I was thinking about it. Like, technically, that might be one of the most viewed matches I've ever had because she's got like, millions of followers, and if she
For
was
sure.
broadcasting it to all of them, like who knows what the actual final numbers turned out to be. But yeah, no, she just kind of bum rushed me, and she was fangirling and freaking out, and I was like, whoa, hell yeah, like yeah, fun. Yeah, I'll take a picture, sure. I didn't really even realize like the scope of it until she posted the picture that we took, and within like hours, I had 200 new followers and billion comments and just yeah, it's crazy the power of social media. But yeah, no, that was all just sort of happenstance. It's kind of the way that those things work in wrestling.
Yeah, that's super cool. Is that show in Austin? Is that where Sabotage runs, right?
Yeah, they have a couple different
I feel like,
venues.
I feel like I should know that.
One, I'm trying to think where the last one you and I did together, I don't think that was in Austin. I
No,
think
that
that
was
was,
at Southern Junction in Dallas.
yeah, that sounds right because it was like a dual branded show with
Hmm.
uh, whoever else was down there. But yeah, now this one was in Austin. I think it's the Come and Take It bar, whatever it's called. Um, but yeah, no, that's a real cool venue. Like I love those kinds of uh, unorthodox atmospheres for wrestling. Because there's always kind of the cookie cutter. Oh, we're in a BFW hall or we're in a gymnasium, but like when you can get those cool like bar atmospheres with balconies and people in weird places and the ring in a weird place, like I love those kinds of uh, weird settings for wrestling.
Yeah. Speaking of that, besides freelance, because I know they have a really dope setup at that place that they run. What are the and Sabotage? Since you just talked about that place, what are the other couple favorite venues that you've wrestled in?
So I did like the early show for Beyond Wrestling a few years ago. Me and a group of the freelance guys were just doing like a little Northeast tour, um, and we got to work there. It wasn't like the full Beyond experience because I've seen how it is when it really fills up, like for the night shows. But it was still cool. Like it was during the day, and they just have people all over there right up against the ring. Um, that was really cool. There, like, and actually, you mentioned freelance, but I feel like the true um, like peak of freelance in terms of atmosphere was when it first started because we ran in a place called the Abbey Pub in Chicago, and it was almost like an old school sort of Elks Lodge feel from like ECW, where it was two levels and the fans on the second level were literally right over the ring. So if they reached over and like extended their hand, it like could go past the top rope. Like they were right there on top of you, and they had fans all around the ring. I think it was a like a kind of a punk rock concert venue when it wasn't holding wrestling shows, but it just had perfect atmosphere, and the way that they were shooting it at the time really captured just how unique the place was. So I think, and unfortunately, that place had a real bad fire that they've been trying to recover from for the past, I don't know, probably 4 5 years now at this point. But yeah, that was like, to me, that's what made freelance freelance. I think that's when it really started to capture people's attention on a national level because you saw the footage, you saw just how crazy and intense the atmosphere was, and that's really kind of what gave it that unique aura that it still has today. Um, but yeah, no, I've wrestled in a lot of places that are unique for good reasons and unique for bad reasons, and I'm sure you've done the same thing. Um, to me, I love street festivals. Like anytime you get to wrestle in a place that doesn't know what wrestling is, I think that's a really cool thing to do because you get to bring it back to the basics, and people are just so fascinated by what they're seeing. Like
Yeah.
you freaking put on a headlock and give somebody a shoulder tackle, and people just like, holy shit, he knocked that guy down. Oh my god! And like, I
Yeah.
wish it'd be great if all shows could still be like that. But
Hmm. We could wrestle for 70 years.
yeah, exactly. Because yeah, I think when you do this long enough, like the fans who are not saying anything disparaging about them, but they get educated to a certain point where you have to think like 2 and 3 steps ahead to really capture their attention. But when you go out to just the casual people, the everyday people, like they have zero understanding of what they're watching. So they appreciate everything about wrestling so much more. The look, the moves, the just all of it. Like just the ring itself, they're so fascinated before the show even starts. Like, oh my god, look at this ring! Take a picture of me in front of this cool ring. Like, it's such a simple dynamic when you get out in front of just normal people.
Yeah. I love that vibe. Yeah, it's great. It feels good. You know, you feel like you're appreciated for like all this hard work and like trying to master this skill, which is like not masterable. I don't even know if that's a word, but whatever. But they seem to just appreciate like the simple dynamics of it, and it's awesome. Yeah, so you're totally right.
And I think it's a good training tool for younger wrestlers too, because when you do just basic shows, sometimes we kind of tie ourselves in knots trying to outsmart both the fans and ourselves. And I remember one of my favorite uh, quotes from a trainer was, I did a William Regal seminar a number of years back, and his philosophy that he wanted us to take into every match is, if you took two random people off the street and sat them in the crowd, could they follow what you're trying to do in the ring?
Mm.
And I think when you do like festival shows, that's literally what's happening, is you're just taking people who are happening to walk by at the time, and they're now watching this show that's starting. And is what you're doing in the ring going to be uh, translatable to these everyday people who don't understand wrestling? So, if you and I have a match, we're not going to get in there and start, ding, 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 reverse Rana, dive, brainbuster on the apron. Like, it would be dumb to do that because they don't understand anything. So if I, lock up with you and you push me down and go, I'm Jaxon Stone, I'm big and strong, this guy sucks. They're going to go, boo, I hate Jaxon Stone. I want that other guy to win. He's better. Like, it's such a good atmosphere for young wrestlers to really just take things down to the basic level and just focus on entertaining people, just entertaining everyday, average, Joe people. Like, just break this down to what it's always been intended to be.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. When's the last time that you had a wrestling match? It's been a while, yeah?
Yeah, it was early March. I did a four-way for First Wrestling up in Minnesota, and
Was that at the synagogue?
no, it was
Oh,
in a mall. Like, I don't know if they were renovating or what, but they had this big, like, I don't know if it was a JC Penney or something, but like it had all been hollowed out, and they were able to like rent that space and just fill a bunch of people in there. So it was really cool. Like, again, another unique atmosphere. Who would have thought of wrestling in a hollowed out department store? But that seems to be like the going trend right now. There's a lot of places doing that.
yeah, because I know First Wrestling is running out of a synagogue, and I am just very excited about it. I've wrestled in a few churches, but as a Jewish man, I've never wrestled in a synagogue yet, and so I can't wait for that chance. And it's like the synagogue of Aaron, which is like my name, so like I feel like it's spot on, But anyways, do you have any matches planned, or like what's next for you?
No, everything is to be determined at this point. In a way, like, I don't want to say it's a good thing, but like with the restrictions being what they are in Chicago, it's just not even a consideration to do shows right now, whether it's empty arena or limited capacity or anything. Like, they're just not at that point. So there's nothing on the horizon for freelance or underground or any of the places that I would normally run. Which, to me, I'm, again, I don't want to know if it's right to say that I'm happy about it, but like, with my personal beliefs on the pandemic and wrestling and all that, like, I don't want to be in a position where I have to make a choice. It's like, either you do what's right for the company or you do what's right for yourself, and you have to make that choice. Like, I'm kind of glad that the choice is taken out of my hands, because it's been my philosophy from the start. I don't want to do shows. I don't want to travel. I don't want to be around people that have been traveling. Like, it just seems very overall irresponsible to me. So yeah, I think not. And at this point, with how far along we are, I think it's a matter of I'm not doing anything until I'm vaccinated. Like, it's just, if we've come this far, then why start playing in the fire right now? So yeah, I mean, it could be, and again, that's to be determined too. So that could be, I'll be ready in a couple months, I'll be ready in 6 months, I'll be ready in a year. Who knows? It just kind of depends on how things progress in this country.
Yeah, yeah, you're sticking to your guns, man. That's amazing. I respect the shit out of that. So kudos to you.
and like, and I don't want it to come across like I'm looking down on the people that have chosen to do shows. I know you've done shows, and Lainey's doing shows. I mean, she's at a show right now. Like, there's, I don't begrudge the people that have chosen to stay active during this time, but I think what it comes down to for me is that normally with wrestling, anything that we do that's dangerous or irresponsible, whatever, the consequences are all just on us. So like, if I want to go out there and do a 450 onto a burning table onto a concrete floor, the one that's gonna suffer the consequences is me. So like, if I get hurt, if I ruin my life, that's on me. But like, the fact that if I go out there and I get myself sick, and then I come home and I go to work and I get other people sick, that's what gets me. Like, I can't. The fact that my choices could now start adversely affecting the people around me is what stops me from even taking that first step. Like, it's just not worth it to me at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't view it as you looking down on me or anyone else doing shows, really. I just feel, I mean, like I said before, yeah, like I feel like I respect you for that decision and for sticking to what you believe. I think that's admirable. And I think more people should, to stand behind the things that they say and take the action behind the things they say. So yeah, cool. I think it's cool.
Yeah. And I've just got too many people, like, directly. I think the people that I'm closest to in my life are particularly vulnerable to the virus. And so it's just a non-starter for me. Like, if I was by myself, or if my group was just a bunch of, early 20s strong young people, maybe I'd be a little bit more bold about it. But like, my parents are high risk. Lainey technically qualifies as high risk, and so yeah, it's just the risks are not worth the reward to me.
Well, yeah. I mean, I hope you stay healthy, and I hope to see you back in the ring whenever we get all this stuff sorted out and everyone's safe and good and we're moving in the right direction. But do you have any closing thoughts? Where should we follow you? Speaking of social media, but yeah, just any last minute things, handles, merchandise, whatever.
Yeah, everything I'm doing now is pretty much just social media. Uh, Twitter is at GPA Thinks. Instagram is GPAIG. Um, but yeah, no, it's so many directions we could go in terms of like closing thoughts. But no, nothing super deep and philosophical. I'm just, hoping that people continue to appreciate like the gravity of what's going on, just overall, whether it's the virus or the political atmosphere or the racial atmosphere in this country. Like, I, one of the things that kind of bugs me is that when people seem to actively try to dismiss what's going on, by sort of deflecting attention to something very mundane. So it's like, this country can be on fire, but you want to focus on your breakfast that morning, or like, hey, I hit a PR on my deadlift or something. Like, I think there's a time and a place for a lot of that, but when things get particularly heavy in life, like, I think it's important to be a real person in those moments and kind of focus on those things. So like, as we, hopefully we're kind of coming out the other side of this in terms of like the worst of things during this period. But I want people to make sure that they're not keeping their head in the sand too much. Like, it's very important that we keep ourselves informed, listen to smart, responsible people who have our best interests in mind, and just kind of appreciate what we're all going through right now. Like, I don't think this is a time to pretend that everything is normal, because it's not. And it'll bring you down, and you'll go through some tough times. But like, I just think that knowledge is a very powerful tool, and it's important to keep yourself informed right now.
Absolutely. Yes. Beautiful closing remarks. I
Mhm.
won't. I won't add anything else to that. Thank you very much for joining me today, dude. I appreciated this conversation a lot, and maybe we'll see each other in person soon. I have no idea.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm holding out hope that by the end of the year we'll be back to all of our crap and traveling and doing our shows and living life the way we want to. So that's my hope for the year, is we'll be back to normal by the end of 2020.
All right, I'm with it. Well, you have a good rest of your day, and take care of yourself. And for those that listened or watched or, whatever, thank you for watching. Go follow GPA, give us a review on Apple Podcasts, and also go follow Lainey. She's a rock star. And yeah, take good care of yourselves. Peace.